Welcome, everyone, to another edition of About the Town. I'm Craig Coughlin, your host. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you. Today, I'm joined by Harold Reed, who, in addition to being a Woodbridge Township police officer, is a motivational speaker and the author of a new book titled Find a Way to Make a Way. Harold, thanks very much for giving us some of your time.
Thanks for having me. No problem.
I guess the first question I have is, how do you find time to do all of these things?
I find a way to make a way.
Honest, we didn't rehearse that.
No, I mean, that's pretty much why I titled the book the way I did, because in my experiences, I often see that, like, if you call a friend up to arrange to go out, have some fun or whatever, the person might say something like, okay, yeah, we'll go out next Thursday. Call me and remind me. Like, we're adults. Why should I call you and remind you? If it's important enough to you, you'll find a way to make a way. Anything that's important enough to a person, they will find a way to make a way. People make a lot of excuses for things that they don't have and don't accomplish in their life. But ultimately, whether it's getting that new car or getting that new article of clothing or that watch or what have you, if it's important enough to you, you'll find a way to make a way.
Talk about being a motivator. Before we talk about the book, let's talk about you a little bit. There is a lot of you in the book, and I think the book is, I guess I'd describe it as, part inspirational, part spiritual, and part autobiographical, I think, in looking through it. But how does one become a motivational speaker? Where do you start?
I know we don't have enough time, so I'm going to do my best to give you the Reader's Digest version. I made a decision a couple years back. I had a lot of spare time on my hands because as a police officer, we have a great schedule here in the township. And I spent a lot of time watching television, playing my PlayStation, everything. But at one point in time, I made the decision to just put the PlayStation down and start picking up some books. And one of the books that I picked up was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And one of the things I learned from that book was the importance of creating your own business, and in addition to doing whatever you do as a 9-to-5. And actually what happened was I actually inspired my wife to create her own business, which is a photography business. And once she actually picked it up and started running with it and actually started making money doing it, then I'm still sitting here thinking, well, what am I going to do? And then I realized that I helped her get started, and in the line of work that I do is my vocation. I'm always counseling people, helping people, and then with my friends, I always give straight, unbiased, objectional advice. So I made that decision at that point, based on the books that I was reading, and I've always read and listened to motivational speakers like Les Brown, Tony Robbins, and Zig Ziglar, and those are the people whose work have actually helped me improve my life. So I figured I would just pick up and teach what I was taught.
Yeah, I noticed in the credits to the book, you thank Zig Ziglar and Donald Trump and Les Brown and a number of people who you acknowledge you've never met, right?
Correct. Oh. I've never met them, but I've read 2 or more of all of their books. And because I implemented the things that they were writing about into my life and benefited from having done so, as I stated in the book, I look at them as my teachers and I thank them. And there also, there's a woman, Craig Coughlin, who was a great teacher of mine when I was a child, George Latour, who's actually a township teacher. Right now he's at Ford's Middle teaching. These are people that helped me become the man that I am. And this being like the most monumental milestone in my life, having written a book, right, I had to thank those people.
Right. Well, let's talk about the book, and let's talk about the creative process and the work that goes into it. What inspired you to actually put all of your thoughts down on paper?
I've always done that. It wasn't so much I decided that I'm going to write a book, and then I started at page 1 and then kept going. The book itself is a compilation of notes from the books that I've read, Donald Trump, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, so on and so forth, blogs that I write on my website. And actually, when I decided to become a motivational speaker, I joined an organization called Toastmasters, because sometimes the only way you're going to learn how to swim is to get in the water, but if you don't have someone to teach you how to swim properly, you're going to drown. So Toastmasters International is an international speaking organization that helps people become better communicators. I mean, I could talk good, but in order to be a professional motivational speaker, I need to learn how to speak well. So, when I learned that Les Brown was named one of the world's best speakers by this organization, that's exactly where I needed to go. So I had members from that organization read my blogs, hear my speeches with them, and after seeing my work and everything, they were like, you should put all of that together and write a book. Another important reason that this book was written was because in my role as a police officer, I actually have a career where when I kiss my wife and kid goodbye, I could be kissing them goodbye. And so I didn't want my son, who's now 5 years old, I didn't want him to be in a position where he's growing up and everyone around him is telling him, your father would have said this, your father would have said that. So a lot of stuff that's in there are notes that I actually wrote down because I wanted to leave him a message. And then, you know, with the encouragement from my colleagues at Toastmasters and everything, and then me deciding to want to, you know, be a speaker, I just put it all together and came up with the book.
Now, when you're on the motivational speaking, doing the tour, I don't want to mischaracterize it, but if you're out speaking, I mean, do you use the book, the things that are in the book?
It depends on who I'm speaking to, because every audience is not the same. My very first speech was, well, before I actually wrote the book, was at an 8th grade graduation ceremony where I had gone to school. You know, that was me. That was my way of putting my foot in the water. So I contacted my principal and asked her if I could address their graduation class. So I'm not going to talk to a bunch of 8th graders about, you know, the things that are in the book. However, just a couple weeks ago, I gave the keynote address at a business school in Linwood, New Jersey, Harris School of Business, and I did address some points that were in the book, because the book is about life, and the things that I've experienced in my life are all in that book, and how I've learned from them. I've had good experiences, I've had bad experiences, but even the bad experiences turned out to be good experience because I learned from them. There's a lesson in the book. Notice I didn't say chapter because all the chapters are characterized as lessons because I learned something from them. There's a lesson in the book called mistakes are a gift from God. Because if you learn from that experience and you don't repeat that mistake again, that's God's way of teaching you something new. So that's very important.
Well, let's talk about the book then. I described it as part inspirational, part motivational, part autobiographical, because there is an awful lot about you and your life, and even some things that I suspect were a little painful to put in words. You talk about watching your parents' relationship disintegrate when you were just a small child, and you talk about, you know, some estrangement from your mom and your dad, and I remember reading about the medals that you took off the wall and stuff. So I suspect that some of those things were pretty painful. Why are they in there?
Because I wouldn't be the man that I am without them. I mean, the first relationship that any of us sees in our life is that between our parents. Some have great relationships. My wife's parents remain married, and they're the best of friends to this day. My parents get along with one another, but we as human beings, just because we are at one particular place at one particular point in time, that doesn't guarantee we're going to stay in that place. Sometimes people grow up, sometimes people grow apart. It just so happens that my parents grew apart, but because the love they once had for one another went a different direction, the love they had for me always stayed the same. So I lived with my mom from the time they got divorced up until I was about 10 years old. She moved out of the state, and pretty much my father wasn't having it, and so they agreed that I stayed here. So I feel that I was really blessed, because when I was at that toddler age, that age where even I tell my wife that it's cool that for our son to be a mama's boy now because he's still little and he can cling to her now. But there comes a point in time when a young boy needs to have that man around, and around 10, when he starts to, you know, get of age of realization in terms of, hey, I got these hairs here and my voice is changing, so on and so forth. You need a man around to guide you in the right place. So I had my father all throughout that point in time. So they molded me in their own ways for me to be the man that I am. So again, just like if I can dedicate a book to Donald Trump and people that I've never met and Zig Ziglar and so on and so forth, there's no way possible I couldn't put my parents in there.
Right. The book's broken into 3 parts: get ready, get set, and then the last part is go. Let's talk about the get ready part. The early chapters. Tell us about. Why don't you tell the story of what the book is really?
Well, you got to lay down a foundation. Everything you have to start somewhere, and that's why one of the first lessons, if not the first lesson, is why are you here? Why are you here? You have to know what your purpose is. If you don't know, create one. And it's not a difficult thing to do. We all live, we all breathe, we all experience life. There's a saying that goes, there are 3 types of people in the world: those who know what happened, those who watch what happened, and those who don't know what just happened. Some people let life happen to them. All right, but if you determine why you're here and you create a purpose for yourself, and you figure out what you're an attorney, you're a talk show host, I'm a police officer, my wife is a photographer. You know, everybody has a purpose, but the work comes in finding out what that purpose is and then committing yourself to fulfilling that purpose. So the first section is get ready. That lays down a foundation. Another one of the lessons is about goals. In that section, you have to have goals. Okay, once you have your foundation, you know where you are. Where do you want to go? And then you have to go about making that happen. I think the overall message of the book is, and I state this often throughout the book, is that people can have and do and be anything they want. I totally believe that God in the universe, or whatever people deem their higher power to be, exists to grant us the things we want in life. But just because we want it doesn't necessarily guarantee that we're entitled to have it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you do emphasize in the book that in a number of different places and in a number of different ways that you do need to have a foundation, you do need to have goals, you do need to be motivated, but you got to work at it.
You have to work. I mean, some people are born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Some people are born with platinum spoons in them. Some people are born with a whole table set. Okay? But that's not me. That's not the people that I deal with. That's not the people I see every day. That's not the family I came from.
Well, and that's not the majority of people.
Exactly. I mean, I think one of the books that I read, it states that 90% of the world's wealth is owned by 10% of the people. Of the population, okay? And the reason why that is because it's those 10% that are willing to put in the work necessary to get it. Even people who inherit fortunes or are born into fortune. Look at all the people that are in the newspaper today. I won't say anybody's names, but people who were born into wealthy families. Mm-hmm. They're not famous for the work that they do. Right. They're just famous for being famous, and the only time they get attention is when they get in trouble because they don't have any appreciation for the wealth that they do have. However, when you work to achieve something and you put in the struggle to achieve it, and once you've attained it, you have an appreciation for it. I know we agreed before taping that we weren't going to talk a lot about me being a police officer, but it took me 6 years to get this job. And I didn't start here in Woodbridge. I started in East Orange. Okay, it took me 6 years to do that. Some people can take the test, pass the test, and boom, they're hired. It didn't happen for me like that.
And you talk in the book about that.
Right.
I mean, there's a real honesty to the book, Harold, that it makes it enjoyable. You know, you talk about the times when you were a security guard, walking around in the middle of the night going, boy, this is not good.
Yeah.
And finally, you got motivated to, well,
I was on a journey. I was on a journey, and again, just because you want something doesn't entitle it to you automatically, and just because you want something, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get it when you want it. Okay, I wanted to be a cop like that. It just didn't happen like that, though. I had to put in work. I had to be patient. I had to have faith. I had to be diligent. And so once you do those things and you implement those things into your life, if it's meant to be yours, it'll happen. But you have to walk towards it in order for it to come to you.
And you need to be prepared for the downside, right?
Absolutely.
You talk. You said before that what was it that? The one I remember is that failure isn't an option; it's an opportunity.
Correct.
You know, and along with you know, God doesn't always say yes. Right. I mean, those kind of things are in there, and you have. It is really a manual for fighting through those things too.
Exactly.
And the bubble busters. Tell us about the bubble busters.
That's always a favorite chapter. Anybody who reads the book, they always talk about the bubble busters. People know bubble busters. We've all grown up with bubble busters. The first bubble busters we meet are actually people in our family. And what a bubble buster is a person who tells you what you can't do. They tell you what you're incapable of. Whether or not they have the educational or knowledgeable grounds to tell you what you can't do. That's why they exist. I want to be this. Well, you can't do that. I want to get into real estate. Why? You know, I mean, sometimes you have to take heed to what people are saying. You know, if you're 5'0" and you can't put a
You making fun of me?
No,
okay.
not at all. Everyone is 5 foot something at some point if they're not shorter.
All right,
well, no, seriously. You could if you're 5 foot whatever, and you're striving to go to the NBA.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an easy task.
Right.
And a lot of times people will tell you, you can't do it. You can't do it. I mean, but somebody told that to Muggsy Bogues. He's an example in the book.
Spud Webb.
Okay, Spud Webb. You know, but they put in the work necessary. Okay. Bubble busters are the people who tell you what you can't do. They can't see or have they don't have a larger vision for themselves. So how could they possibly have a larger vision for you? You know, they're quick to tell you what you can't do, but what are they doing to better themselves? So it's good that you and I write about it in the book, you have to acknowledge these people for who they are. Some of them may be very, very close to you, and they might actually be telling you that, you know, you can't do this. It's not reasonable. Be reasonable. I don't believe in being reasonable. If I'm striving to be successful, I'm not going to be reasonable. I have yet to meet or hear of or read about a successful multimillionaire who's reasonable. Reasonable people accept limitations. Unreasonable people fight to exceed those limitations. But a smart person in between can tell when, okay, this isn't working, maybe I need to try something else. Right. Again, just because you want something doesn't entitle it to be yours. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to get it. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier today. He was telling me about a problem he was in, and I offered a solution. And he was like, yeah, that's easier said than done. I've come to really despise that statement because it's an excuse. It's an empty excuse. Just because it's easy. Yeah, okay, it's easy for me to say it, and I understand the situation might be difficult, but difficult doesn't equate to impossibility.
Right.
So yeah, it's hard. If it's worth having, if it's worth doing, it's not going to be easy. Having a successful marriage is not easy. I get on my wife's nerves a lot.
No.
Absolutely. I get on her nerves a lot. It's not. She gets on my nerves too. But we love each other, and our family is important to us. And because it is, we find a way to make it work.
It's good the way you weaved in the title of the book. That was good.
It's always in there.
And Taria is off camera, folks.
So don't get me in trouble.
We're going to have to. Well, there may be something to address after this. And you conclude the book with the go section.
Yes.
Which is a fun section. So tell us, how do people get going?
Well, you just do it. Like Nike says, you just do it. Once you've decided where you are and why you're here, and you've determined where it is you want to go, and you've done your due diligence, you've done your studying, you're doing your reading, at some point in time you have to commit. You have to jump in. Okay, you could talk about you could read about wanting to scuba dive and parasail and whatever, but if you really want to do it and you really want to live it, you can't just watch videos of it on YouTube or read magazines about it. At some point in time, if that's your thrill, then you're going to have to go to the beach and jump behind a boat and let them strap a parachute to your back. And you might wind up hating it. Who knows? You might wind up loving it. But you have to commit yourself to doing it. I committed myself to writing a book. And the funny thing is, I had like maybe about 70, 80 pages of material and thought I had done something. And then I was like, this isn't enough. Mm-hmm. I had to keep on going. It's a process. Once you set out to do something, you commit to doing it, you have to see it through. Even if at some point you go, this isn't working. Okay, going back to the failure is not an option, it's an opportunity. Failure is not the end-all, be-all unless you allow it to be. If you commit yourself to succeeding, then a failure is nothing but a setback. A failure is something that says, okay, this isn't the way for it to be done. Now you have an opportunity to find a way, to make a way, for it to be done. Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times before he created an effective working light bulb. And they asked him, well, what kept you going? He said, I only learned 999 ways that this thing didn't work.
Right. And you talk about it. And you talk about that a lot in the book. That things will happen. That there is
God, yeah.
The plan is not necessarily going to work out to perfection, and that. Yeah, I guess that's really the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the challenge to being successful.
Absolutely.
Dealing with the failure. One of the quotes, and the book is just replete with all sorts of of quotes that you've heard before, but really kind of captures it and lays it out in a very readable way, if I may make an editorial comment. Things that we've all heard before. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step,
right.
And from quotes from throughout the world, both philosophers and business people, and pretty much every walk of life, that the person who's a success if he falls down 1,000 times and gets up 1,001,
right?
Because the last time you're left standing,
right.
Those kind of things. What do you hope that people take from the book?
That they can do, have, be anything they want, provided they're willing to put in the work necessary for it. And one of the things, messages I stress early in the book is that when you take a stand, when you decide, okay, this is what I'm going to have, this is what I'm going to do, when you decide to take a stand before God, the universe, or whoever you deem your higher power to be, the universe will pay attention to you if you're serious. And at that point, when you say, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to be a photographer, I'm going to be a motivational speaker, then that higher power is going to send a 911 page to Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law will then begin making his or her way to your house. They will pitch a tent in your backyard, and as you're strutting on your journey to success, Murphy's Law is knocking on your door, and like Murphy's Law says, whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and at the worst possible time. This is the universe's way of making you prove yourself worthy of possessing what it is you want to have or achieve in your life. So it's very important that you just stay the course. You have to stay the course. So
where are you at in your journey now?
I'm selling this book very well. I just sold over 100 copies this past week, so I'm very proud of that.
And it just came out.
And
right?
it just got released in September, and I'm just writing. I'm in the process of actually writing my next book, and this book is a very nice feeling, touchy-feely kind of book, and I'm not a very touchy-feely kind of person, but at the same time I understand that I'm not just talking to my friend that I know who's known me for years. I have to communicate myself in such a way that is not as aggressive as I know my nature can be. Mm-hmm. So I had to really work to just be very plain spoken, but still maintain some humor and some levity and get my message across. My next book is going to be a little bit more aggressive. The title, the working title right now is Success is a Journey from the Womb to the Tomb. Yeah, so I mean,
we may need to work on that title.
No, because I mean, life is a 4-step process. And this is also in the book. Okay. You start something, you endure it, you complete it, you move on to the next thing. Everything in life revolves around that 4-step process. We live, we age, we die, and there's another journey somewhere over there. Okay, and that's life in and of itself, from the womb to the tomb. You're gonna live. You're going to endure, you're going to die. Okay, now we don't know what's going to happen on that other side. We have no control over that. But we do have control at some point in time as to what happens while we're here. And so that book is like the 200 and some odd page introduction to the next book. So I'm on my journey right now. Am I rich? No. But I'm on my journey right now.
What's been the hardest thing you've had to overcome?
I really can't answer that. I really can't answer that because I expect there to be obstacles. Mm-hmm. I don't expect myself to be limited by those obstacles. So once I've overcome those obstacles, I appreciate the lessons learned. So what one might consider a hard thing, I gained something positive from it. So I turned that negative into a positive. I can say it was hard working as a flashlight security guard when I wanted to be a police officer for those 6 years. That was hard, but I overcame it and I became a better person to appreciate what I have because of that. You know, I could say that one of the hardest things I had to endure was my parents divorcing when I was young and having to live in two different households. But I had two birthdays, I had two Christmases, I had two Thanksgivings. So I had two parents who loved me to death, and I had grandparents and everything. So I had to turn those things into a positive. So you can't let yourself get stagnated in the muck and mire of just negative situations, because as long as you wake up, and people always, hey, how you doing? I'm better than good, better than most. Too blessed to be stressed. For real, every day above the dirt, below the radar is a good day to me. Yeah. As long as I wake up. My wife, and a lot of other people, I'm not a morning person. I'm not. Let you not have a morning to wake up to and see. Right. And then you have a problem. If the morning comes and you're not there to see it, then you got some serious issues going on in your life.
So is there an end to your journey?
Eventually. At some point, because that's that third step. The journey will end, but then you start something else.
Well, I mean, is there an ultimate success for you?
I won't know that until I'm on the other side looking back. I won't know, because I won't know till I'm on the other side looking back. So I can see, hopefully, looking down, and everyone's saying, oh, he did this and he did that, and he helped me turn, helped me figure out what I wanted to do in my life. I could have done this, but because he spoke to me or because I read his book, I wound up doing that, and I'm better for it.
But isn't it important for you, for any person, to enjoy the journey, to take at points to look at it as it's going along and saying, this is fun.
Oh,
this is good.
I'm having the time of my life now. I mean, I'm succeeding on my journey now. I wrote a book. Not everybody can do that.
That's true.
I believe, actually, that's not true. I believe everybody can. I believe everybody does have a book in them. As long as you're living and you're breathing and you're experiencing life and you're learning from your mistakes, then you have a book in you. Because every experience is a chapter. Just like every chapter in my book is a lesson, because I learned something from it. But the hardest part is the honesty that you have to have, not with the people you'd be communicating to, but the honesty that exists from this point to the pen in the hand. Now, when you can get all of that aligned and you can put the truth on paper, right, then you have your book. Then you have something there. So I'm very proud of this book and of this project, and it's given me a lot more confidence to go into the next project.
The book is called Find a Way to Make a Way. It's available on Amazon.com.
Correct.
Or people can go to your website. What's the website?
The website is www.HRJR-enterprises.com. And there's a Contact Me section in there. And anyone who contacts me directly via email requesting a copy of the book, they can, as long as I have supplies on hand, they'll get an autographed copy of the book sent directly to them.
There you go. My guest has been Harold Reed, who is an author and motivational speaker and a police officer.
Yes, sir.
Harold, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you again for having me.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for joining me. Thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you the next time we go about the town.